Hi everyone, seguimos con esta siguiente conversación sobre producto digital con tres invitados de primer nivel: Arne Kitler, director de producto en Xing; John Cutler, head of research and education in Amplitude; and Todd Lombardo, that is already a good speaker for us as long as he done the keynote, opening keynote in Spanish. That's a huge effort.
That's incredible.
Big congrats to him, and he's currently VP of product at MachineMetrics. So the idea of this session is going to be a bit different. We're gonna have a conversation about how playing in a indie rock band, taught those three product leaders and prepared them to product management. So that's going to be open topic. Pedro Torrecillas is going to be my chairman, and we're going to ask those three guys.
Also a great moderator, you will mention that.
Yeah. So, Pedro, if you want to introduce yourself quickly, I think that everyone has already.
Yeah, I'm Pedro Torrecillas. I'm actually one of the founders of Kitler right now, but I've been working in product for my previous career. So, yeah.
Cool. So how did we came up with this topic? To be perfectly honest, Arne was the one that came with this great idea of organizing this conversation. Why? Because he already identified the topic that was worth it. Having this conversation and thinking about all these bridges we can find between indie rock bands and product management. He actually prepared a talk with other product leaders, including John Cutler. But at the end, unfortunately, the event didn't took place, and the idea was that we identified that we had the perfect lineup today: John Cutler, Todd Lombardo, and Arne Kitler. So we decided to kick off this conversation. Let's go directly. On this first topic, we thought that it could be interesting with Pedro to think about some let's start it with this question. Some indie and unknown products describe themselves in relation to a mainstream product or well-known product, like the Uber for orange juice or Airbnb for cats. As an introduction, guys, can you describe your band or your different bands you've been playing with following this high-level concept idea? Arne, if you want to start on this one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course, it's like all niche bands. Of course, they would always kind of resist putting themselves into kind of drawers because we are also super unique, but it turns out we are not. So to try to give you an explanation, like my second band, Yolanda, that I played in the most, could be compared to a vegetarian torero trying to balance on a mirror ball. So it was a bit weird German lyrics and so on. And my current band, which is called Pau, may feel like early The Cure trying to be LCD Sound System. So maybe you get a sense for. So it's always about amazing. Kind of pretending to kind of be dancey, as you can tell from both descriptions, but not being a bit clumsy about it. That's, I think, what both bands have in common.
I'm definitely going to look out.
Yeah, check them out. How about yours, John?
It always comes to like depends on the band. You forget all of them after a little while. I think that when I fronted a band, it was like, I don't know, like Burt Bacharach meets Sufjan Stevens. I know that sounds weird. So if you know those, musicians, it's something, but, you know, think about like crafted songs, but then with like violins and guitars and, you know, flute and then electric guitars and stuff. So it was kind of weird. So that was one of them. The other, I played in this big power pop band that was like Cheap Trick or ELO, but like though it was, we didn't take ourselves seriously enough. And now in retrospect, we should have taken our music much more seriously because people thought we were joking half the time. But like, so that's another example. I don't know, Todd, those, I can think of a bunch more, but those are two that came to mind.
So my first band that I was in high school was called Black Frost. So yeah, exactly. And this is like late 80s, early 90s, you know, I was, I don't know, 15 years old or something at the time. Yeah, you can imagine even just with that name and the times, it was like very like this combination like metal hair band meets like quasi grunge Seattle, you know, burgeoning, not quite there yet. And of course we're in Boston on the East Coast, so a little different sound. So that was just kind of odd. But then probably the band I spent the most time in was called Rich Girl Method. And I can't believe Arne actually found like a whole old blog post on it. But I thought I'd wipe the internet clean, but apparently not. And we had a female fronted band. I was bass player. People kept comparing us to the Corrs and the Cranberries. Like, you sound a lot like the Corrs and the Cranberries, and maybe a little touch edgier than them in a sense, but I don't know. That's kind of how it goes.
We have a couple of bass players. So you both Todd and Arne, or what about you, John?
Yeah, I play some bass too. Yeah, okay. It's 4 strings. It's much easier for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, same here.
Like 6 strings is a lot. Like 6 strings is a lot to worry about.
Okay, moving to the next topic, we wanted to discuss the issue of trust. So both as product managers and also by being on a band or leading a band even, you're trying to move forward with a team toward a shared goal with a lot of uncertainty. How do you build trust in a band, and how do you think we can use those learning in product management? John, for instance.
Yeah. You know, I think that's a good, when I think about touring, especially, I mean, I remember if you're touring, you know, 200 days into the year or something in vans out in the country, oh my God, people just rub you the wrong way. Like, it doesn't matter if they're, I mean, my best friend in the world, I had to be in a van with him for 200 days. And like, it was always, we always kind of felt we were on the edge, but because we had a lot of shared experiences, I think that was the thing, is that at the end of the day, you knew that you held this bond, right, of making something. And that's just something that's incredible. But the trust thing, but it was also the games. Like someone said about the stories, but in the United States, there's an area of the United States that's completely flat. There's no trees. And we were in Cincinnati where they have a special kind of chili that gave me like an incredible stomach ache. And so the whole thing is they wouldn't stop for anything. They don't stop. They're not going to pull over. So they pull over on the side of a huge highway, and then I have to go to the bathroom. And so I run out into a field. That's the only thing I could do. And like I was by the van, and it was an incredibly stressful situation. They just drove off, just left me on the side of the road with my pants down to do those things. But then it's always the jokes, you know, like then I played a joke on the lead singer because of that, where I pretended to be a fan for a whole month, and he entered this like long romantic relationship with a person over email. And that was me the whole time. And like, he was persuaded that this person was telepathic because they knew everything about his life when I was just sitting there, you know, just sending him the messages from her fake account, email account. And it was terrible. Like, he thought he had found the love of his life, but that was the whole band playing jokes on him. So we would play a lot of jokes, but at the end of the day, you trust each other a lot because you share those experiences.
I have a funny story that kind of goes on somebody being sick. We're scheduled to play Great Scott here in Alston in Boston. There's a lot of indie bands play. And we were excited. It was one of our first times there, and if you know the Boston area, you know the common place that people play. So we were excited to book the show. It was like a Thursday night, so it wasn't like a Monday night or something. It was like a good spot on a Thursday night. So in that area of Boston is where a lot of I think BC students go. So we knew we were in a good spot, ready to have a good time. Well, our singer got really, really sick to the point where like she's like, yeah, I couldn't be not near a bathroom for any short amount of time. Like whatever she ate that day just did not sit well with her. And so we're like, uh-oh, what do we do? So we're like, well, how do we pull this off? Can we figure out who sings what song? So we basically continued with the show with, well, not me. I don't have the greatest singing voice. I think I sang 1 or 2 songs, but my guitar player, he ended up picking up most of the vocals on all the songs, and it was kind of just an interesting thing. But that's kind of like, it's this interesting like challenge that you overcome together, and that kind of builds an interesting bond, and you can build some trust, even though you have like cat fights or arguments about things, like all that stuff. But that's kind of a story I have. But it's that like overcoming something together, overcome some crazy challenge together, also can help build bonds.
Yeah, I mean, now that you talk about those challenges, I think also we had those challenges. Like we were once playing a show in London, and we were arriving, like one of us was coming from Hamburg through Amsterdam, and 2 of us were already in the UK at that time. And our friend Jochen, who was supposed to arrive through Amsterdam, he was stuck in fog in Amsterdam. So it was not clear if he would actually land on time for our show. And then kind of the main act of the evening, they switched with us so that we would have some more time. And we were also doing all these kinds of preparations that you also just spoke about, Todd, like saying, oh, how can we pull this off without the bassist in that case, because he was playing bass. And then he arrived literally like 5 minutes before we were supposed to go on stage. And that was one of our best shows ever, because we were so relieved. That was really, helping us bond and yeah. And I think, regarding the trust, I had two other thoughts on that. I mean, one, I think for us, it was also always important to be very clear about our goals as a group. And for instance, for us, like we never went 200 days of touring a year, because for us, it was always clear, like first our studies and then later family and jobs would have priority. And the band, even though we took it very serious and we were really, we're putting a lot of passion into it, still it was number 2. That was clear. And then as a band, not very practically, but we managed to finish our studies 4 years in a row. And then afterwards, right after, we had a series of 5 kids in a row. So we never got very far as a band, because there was always something clearly more important going on, but at least we were agreeing on that. And so nobody really complained about it. And I know some other bands who split in these situations because they had different ambition levels, and one of them was disappointed that the others wouldn't go on 200 days of tours. And I think another aspect that also was important for us as a band was that we were clear about our roles, not just saying, okay, you play bass, you play guitar, but also what else do you do? Because in those small bands, we did everything. So it's not, you have a lot of roles that are not part of your job description, so to speak, but somehow has to take care of them. So for instance, for us, I was always kind of the networking guy, as you can probably tell, and also like trying to do the business side of things. And then, for instance, one of my friends who's really good in writing, like he was doing the press releases and so on. And I think we never sat down and said, you do this, you do that, but it was just clear. And we knew we could rely, okay, if a press release needed to be written, it was clear who would do it. And as well as somebody needed to reach out to a label, it was clear that it was me. And that really also gave everyone clarity. And so we didn't have any disappointments, for instance. I think the same thing is also in a team. Like if you know what to expect from each other, you avoid disappointments and you feel safe to collaborate well. And that's what we did as a band and what we also strive for in our teams.
Okay, cool. Let's move to the next topic. That's the following. It's okay to play to small audiences, but not wise to pay to play. Thinking about this big topic we are having today, looks like there's a typical rookie mistake for those small indie bands and not to go out there to play enough or not having enough confidence in facing the audience and how is your music going to be evaluated by the potential audience. So urging to play ugly, play often, play different song. That in product spheres, we used to say that eat your own done food is something necessary. I think that in music, in any creative process, iteration is part of this, of the process. But is it okay really to embark your team and your band on a tour consisting on a very few shows, not getting paid to play, assuming all the costs, hotel, transportation, and everything else?
Been there.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I mean, lots of things suddenly become okay when you're, I think that's one thing that's related to the product thing, is that there's this magic when something, I'm probably getting even emotional thinking about it, but it's the same when you're as a whole team and you've put something out there in the world and you see people using it and you see people getting excited about it. Like when you've, maybe spent 5 months trying to record a record and you're all in your own head, and then you go out and it's like, even if it is just a couple people, the first time you get up there and you do it, I think that that's like an incredible feeling. And the truth is, for most, that paying a lot of money to get somewhere and paying gas and all that, that's really hard. But I remember playing for 2 people and you're like, this is great. Like, how lucky am I to at least, like, some sound person showed up, like, we are sitting here, we're our friends, like, there's a real stage. We're not sitting in a rehearsal space, like on the carpet. It's actually a stage. The monitors don't work, but that's okay, And so I think that that's once you get up there, everything else fades. One of the problems, and it's the similar thing with product, it's after the show. All the self-doubt about what you're doing and why you did it and why you did that show, it's actually, you get an adrenaline rush being on stage so much. And then afterwards you start asking, oh, should we have done this? Or, oh, we messed up that song. So that's actually similar to product, the adrenaline rush of like getting the release out there. People are so excited. And then the adrenaline afterwards, you almost have to like come down off that high of playing. And then that's when you ask all those questions about, was it worth it, or should I have done it or done anything like that? That's my experience. I don't know, Todd, what you think?
Yeah. And it's, reality kicks in and you got to think about what to do. Like, all right, well, this was good. What did we learn from playing in this, 5-person audience on a Tuesday night in Quincy, Massachusetts, right? Or a Sunday night in, some really, really remote location. But, there's definitely an element of that. But I think we used it as an opportunity to try different things, or say, well, we know it's going to be a small audience. It's great that we get to play because, kind of like you need the mileage, right? You need the time, the stage time. And if you have the means to be able to get it, do it. So for us, it was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Even if we have to drive 2 hours outside the city and play for 5 people. But as you said, those 5 people, they showed up, they're drinking a beer, they're grooving to your music. And you're like, all right, these people are not like, they're not leaving. One of them might even buy a CD in the days of CDs. And we also tried, like, there was one song we recorded where I did the guitar solo, or the guitar track. And so for some of the shows that we did that were bigger, like, we would just switch. I'd play the guitar for that song and he'd play the bass. And so we use those shows as like, hey, well, why don't you kind of work on the guitar solo and see if like you feel comfortable enough with it. And so after a couple of those live shows, where like he was fine, but it took a few of those to like experiment. I equate it to like if you've ever read the book Little Bets, they open with I think a similar thing in stand-up comics. Like the stand-up comics in New York City, they go to these tiny clubs where they have like an audience of 10 on a Monday night, but it helps them try out the jokes that they don't know are going to hit or land. They're brand new. And they do that until they get the really big ones. So when they have the Saturday night, stadium crowd, they know that those are going to be the ones, the heavy hitters. How about you, Arne?
Yeah, I mean, for us, to be honest, we never played massive audiences anyways. Like, I think we went up to 200, 250 or so. That was the most, but we also played to much less than that. And I think it depends on really like you can even get a lot of learning and a lot of follow-up and relationships out of even a very, very small show. Like I remember like with one of the bands, like the very first show we played, we drove all the way to a small village in Belgium called Diksmuide, and we played in front of, 10 or so people. But it really gave us, the next day we were playing at a bigger festival, and that way we could kind of warm up and get accustomed to actually playing live as a band in front of an audience. So that really helped us build confidence. And also in this very small audience, there were a couple of people were from a local band, who we became really close friends with, and then afterwards we kept inviting each other. You know, we invited them to Hamburg, they invited us to Bruges and Ghent, where they lived, and we played some really nice shows in beautiful theaters in Ghent and Bruges, only just because we had played there, and they appreciated, and we kind of bonded because we were on a similar track. So even though it was not very many users, so to speak, that we were in front of, but there was a very intense learning experience on various levels for us, and also relationships that kind of paid off in later, even though we didn't go there to make those relationships, but we were open to them. And so I think the same is also like when you have your first users, you know, really appreciate them and be open to whatever you can value you can take from them, right?
It also shows the value of shipping, I think. Now that I think about it, like I remember, you know, the one band I played at that did actually get a record deal, a major label deal versus, you know, like an indie label, was we did a show at the Viper Room or something in Los Angeles, and that was the label show and everything like that. And for some stupid reason, we thought we would just roll up in the van after driving cross country in the United States for like 40 hours straight or something, 30 hours straight. And we would show up and we would like adjust to the new pressure of doing that. Like we didn't get to Los Angeles maybe 3 weeks before and do a bunch of shows. We thought, oh, we're just going to arrive at the whatever it was, and we're going to like have a great show, and all the equipment was going to work well, and we'd be able to hear ourselves. And I remember the manager at the point saying, yeah, John, we just had to turn your vocals off that whole show. Like we did not want to hear, you were just singing backups. Like we had to turn almost everyone down because you guys sucked doing that. So it's like that idea of the team that waits for 6 months to like, it's a muscle to like get product out into the world. And a lot of teams, I think, realize that, but they don't live it, you know, how they're working, especially for young product managers and like younger teams that haven't done it a lot.
I've never played in front of an audience, but like hearing you, is just what you're describing seems like when you ship a new feature, right? And you are just talking with your first user, or you are even looking at your analytics software and seeing the first event, like new sign up, and just seeing the funnels and stuff. You have to actually do that to get to have like the thousands of users and have real data.
Yeah, I mean, the metrics you have is like you I don't know, maybe you have 2 new songs and you play them for the first time in front of people, and you just listen to, you know, to which song they applaud, and that is also, you know, valuable user feedback that you can take and, I don't know, either work on the song that was not applauded before or announce it a different time next time. I mean, there are different paths you can take afterwards, but it's feedback that you need to move forward and develop.
And you move forward with the same information. Like when you're a product manager, you actually talk to 2 people, and you already have something to move forward with. Okay, thank you for that. We're gonna move to the kind of last topic, which is about influential product management, or product managers. Sorry. So we all know that there are bands that define indie music or even rock music for a whole generation. In Spain, I'm sure a lot of people hearing us today know Los Planetas. That's my favorite band and what defined indie music in Spain for over 20 years. What product managers do you think define what product management is right now? What inspirational kind of models do you think are out there? In my case, if I may, Casey Winters and Brian Norgard are kind of the couple of reference for me. What about you? What do you think? On top of yourself, obviously, on top of John, Todd, and Arne, like other guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always been kind of a pearl digger when it came to influencers. So I would usually not say, okay, you know, as an indie band, I check out what Coldplay are doing, and then they are kind of where I take orientation from. I would always, I don't know, either go to the even more niche, maybe more specialized, more nerdy bands, and like the comparison for that would be like, for instance, I have 2 friends from Portugal, Diogo Teles and Luis Trindade, who are both like really, really advanced experimentation savvy product
I love that
managers.
book. Luis's book is amazing. That experimentation book that they wrote is really incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And he's, I mean, he's really, you know, he's a nerd about that kind of stuff, but he is, you know, in that angle, I can certainly learn a lot from him. And this is the same I would do with a band. Like I would not look for Coldplay. I would look for some, you know, I mean, I ordered tapes from like very, very tiny bands in Massachusetts back then to listen to them. And similar thing I would do there. Or, I mean, the other approach for me would be to say, okay, what are kind of classics that I could look to, you know, like not necessarily, I mean, of course, I've also, you know, appreciate Marty Kagan and so on, but not the kind of the most obvious ones, but kind of what side classics are there. And there, like when I was thinking about it, I thought Stephen Bungay, for instance, a guy from the UK, he wrote a book called The Art of Action, which is about clarity of intent and how that helps you in complex situations like war or like startups and our digital environment. So like he's a 60-year-old guy or so and management consultant, and so not the typical product management guy or so. He's not a product manager at all, but he has some interesting stuff to tell from, you know, from another context, and that's also where I draw a lot of inspiration from.
So you go indie for product manager creation, also, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
indie
I'm always I like nerds, and I like to go to the niche.
Strictly vinyl product managers for Arne. It has to. Yep. See, look behind him. It's no joke.
What about the rest? What do you think?
For me, I think you know, I tend to. There isn't necessarily like going out for the rock star, like the star PM, but I think there are people who shape product management in certain ways. You know, I'm influenced a lot by Jana Basta and what she's doing with ProdPad and how she's done things. Of course, you know, that aligns a lot with the roadmap thing that you know, I spend a lot of time on. But also like Hope Gurion, I told a story about her, and she's actually my coach. I hire her as a product leader coach. But she's somebody who also, you know, has her own podcast and shapes things. But she was a VP of product at a couple of Silicon Valley startups, and she's just, the way she thinks about things and shapes things, I think is very beneficial. And while she is out there in her own right, but I think she brings a certain rigor and approach to it, which I think is great. It's a little bit different. It's not like, you know, she's not this huge name, but like those are the kind of things that I like. It's like, yeah, they're like the unsung heroes who do really great work and can help people.
Cool.
I don't know, too, that come to, I'm a little bit like Arne. Like I love people who are nerding out. There's a woman named Ha Fan who works at Pluralsight, and she's just such a like thoughtful designer and like systems thinker and product manager. And I just get like a lot of value out of these like nuggets of wisdom that she's willing to share it. She's also not, you know, she doesn't second think. She doesn't give a lot of filtering to how she shares what her process, which I think is really, really incredible. You know, I like, for example, like what Maggie Crowley's doing with her podcast, like just going out and learning, and you can see that it translates into her work and like what she's doing. So, you know, those are two things. I think one of the things that's very interesting as well, maybe advice for people who are, you know, just inundated. There's just a fire hose of people and personalities out there, is to really, you know, think deeply about like what you're grappling with right now, and then look and try to turn over the stones and like find the people. People are usually really giving, you know, so you know, I get a lot of LinkedIn messages, which are like, yo, and I don't respond to those, but people who take the time to write something that acknowledges that they've thought about what I'm thinking about. And I've noticed from a lot of product leaders around different companies that you know and like, they do the same thing. Like they are willing to open up the email and talk to you. It's a little bit like the music thing. Like if you're a musician, you're always happy to get email, no matter who sends it, right? And so I would encourage people to like think about their current problem and then seek out someone who's like working right out there right now at any company, and see if you can reach out. And if a good email, a good LinkedIn message, usually the person writes back, in my experience.
I think one of the things I'd love to ask John and Arne is like, I'm also inspired by the PMs who report to me or who I mentor or work with. Like, you teach them something, They turn around and what they do with the knowledge that you've offered them and how they internalize it and then operationalize it, to me is also really inspiring, because I've had recently 2 PMs come on my team that have no product experience before. So I'm going to teach them a bit about how to be a product manager. And even just some of the things that they're bringing their own experience with, they're bringing their own spin to things. And like, wow, I never thought of doing it that way. That's really fantastic. What a great spin on something that maybe somebody else in product has thought about it or written about it, but it's like they internalize it themselves, and they kind of took sort of a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing. Like, oh, I'm gonna take what you got, take what I think about it, and actually put this together, and it's actually gonna be even cooler. So I've been really inspired by that too.
Basically, that's like every day when I talk to teams. Like, I just, no matter what the team is, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like they figured something out that, I mean, product is just so hard. That's the thing, is I think that some of the like thought leader things, you just don't peel away to know what their day-to-day is like. And it's probably very familiar to your day-to-day that you're trying to put in motion. So interesting. That was fun.
Nice. We're entering like the last part of this conversation. So let's try sharing all of you a main key takeaway of your experience so far playing in a band that help you on a daily basis as a product manager. What will it be? Experience, a feedback, horrible feedback one day from the audience, or main learning? What would be this main takeaway? Arne, if you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke about these kind of being clear about your roles. And I mean, I think one thing I clearly learned in these do-it-yourself bands is that you have to take additional responsibilities beyond your main role to keep things going forward. And that's good. And you have to be willing to commit to that, to help the team and move the team forward. But at the same time, it's also good to know where your limits are. Like I gave the example, like my friend were much better at writing press releases. So I clearly knew, okay, I won't touch it because they are just the better writers among us. So that would be one learning. Go beyond your role, but also don't. In my case, I will never start programming, for instance, just because it would not be good for the product.
I think mine's a little similar. The lesson that I've learned is around what Amy Edmondson talks about with professional culture clash. And you'd think that you're all musicians, and so that means that you all have the same profession in some sense, or at least the same hobby. But, groups of people with different passions getting together, like there's always sparks are going to fly in a sense as you're doing it. But I think the lesson that I've had is that product development, in my mind, at least my utopian mind, is that sort of messy, collaborative act. And you've got personalities. And so the one thing that I've learned is that teams often get to a point and then hit the moment of friction. And then they've got a choice. They can either they can split into sort of separate teams. Even if they're on one team, it's not really a team. It's actually just 3 teams on there, right? Their managers have their incentives around the engineering manager and they're just not a whole team. And it's like any band too, you kind of reach a point and you have your first argument, you're thinking about recording a record or you're doing something, and then you've got a choice. You can either kind of going back to doing your personal music and like, oh, we play some covers every once in a while, or you can take that step to being like a real creative force that you do it. And so that's what I've learned, is to notice when you're at that point and you need to take that leap of trust with the people around you, and then be willing to commit to do that. And that's where it gets really messy. And to what Arne said about like roles, what you notice is that you go through a cycle where at first roles don't matter, but then they really, really matter. And then they don't matter, but then they really, really matter. But when they really matter at the end, it's out of like complete, deep, mutual professional trust, versus in the beginning, it's more like roles don't matter because I don't want to bother with you right now. And then roles suddenly matter because you're like, because I need to know who's boss to talk to. And then roles don't matter again because you just want to like check out. And then, so it goes through a cycle about roles mattering. But when you've hit that point with the band, it's almost like roles are both very defined, but then also almost non-existent. You've almost internalized that working relationship. So I don't know if that helps, but that's something I think about a lot.
Okay, cool.
For me, it's really around the managing stakeholders, right? You've got to manage your bandmates, right? And you're all trying to create something together jointly. You all bring different talents that are needed to create that joint thing together. Same thing with product, right? You have a designer, you have all these different stakeholders that are coming together, and your ability to bring them together and kind of be that glue. I think Arne commented, he's like, yeah, I think a lot of PMs are more like the bass players, right? We're the ones sitting in the pocket in the back, kind of keeping the groove.
And for some reason doing something digital, or like, that was always me. It was like with the Palm Pilot, like, dude, what did you just do? And I'm like, I got this thing and I've just booked a hotel, on it. So I was getting the hints early on that there was something tech or something business related. That was my call.
Cool.
Dude, I just wiped my whole Mac OS and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get Ableton going again. It sucks. And it's like, oh, just call tech support. That was me, to do this stuff. Anyway.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. We've got to leave the stage for the next talk. In a few minutes, we'll have John again on the stage for the closing. So thanks a lot, Arne, once again for jumping in this conversation. Todd, same. Thanks for joining us today. That was awesome, and yeah, the idea was very cool. I think that's nice to have this kind of conversation, going a bit away from the typical conference thing and presenting slides. So
next time we'll have some women here. We know that this is pretty dude heavy, but that was not the original design of this. So yeah, we will try to mix it up because.
That's true. Yeah, good point. But thanks a lot for having us here. Thank
you so much.
Really, really great.